All right, we are back with True Detective Night Country Part 4. This episode written by Namzi Khan, Chris Mundy, and Issa Lopez, directed once again, as they all have been, by Issa Lopez, who created the show. We start with the continued search for evidence, for information, for location, as Chief Danvers can't sleep and is desperate to find out where these ice caves are, where Annie's video was taken that we saw at the end of part 3. She's visiting anyone she can, including, old flames who are the high school teachers, much to the dismay of the spouse, to try to get information, going to them on Christmas Eve, asking for maps. I mean, she'll stop at nothing. While this is happening, Julia, Navarro's sister, her hallucinations are getting worse. So Navarro checks her into a facility, but when she's still seeing things inside her room, including this orange that we referenced earlier, Julia escapes, walks out into the tundra, out into the frozen ocean, committing suicide. This just sends Navarro off the deep end into a blind rage. She gets beaten up by some miners that she confronted earlier in the season. She's having a breakdown because she admits to Danvers that she thinks she might be next. And Danvers lets us know that it seems like the Wheeler case, the case of the abusive husband that was referenced in the last episode, was perhaps where all of this started for her. In the Pryor household, a lot's going on. Pete's life is getting worse and worse because he can't say no to Chief Danvers. He can't even make it home for Christmas Eve. Hank Pryor's mail order bride, surprise, didn't arrive from Russia like she said she would. You can never trust the Russians. We know that. But what thing Pete does is identify a man named Otis Hayes, who had years back suffered similar injuries to the men trapped in the corpsicle. And so they set off to track him down, try to find out more information about why he might have suffered those things. As we see some daytime start to emerge, Navarro and Danvers get a lead about a man fitting Raymond Clark's description in the pink parka that we saw in episode 1. They search for him in the trenches outside of Ennis. While in those trenches, Navarro's hallucinations continue to get worse. And Danvers finds Otis Hayes, who tells them they're all in the night country now. Very dense, sort of thick pieces
Yeah.
of plot in this episode. I don't know they're necessarily closer to finding out the solving the
No,
case or figuring out what the mystery is.
we're in the night
But
country, right? It's
yeah,
clear.
we're
It's the night
but
country.
all we know now is that we are in night country. Everybody's lives in Ennis are awful and they're getting worse. And we have one more name to add to the list of things that are just making this a very mysterious, very unnerving season. So what's a good place to start here?
Well, I don't know. There's kind of a lot. Do we start at the end? Do we start? I don't know. What about that? I mean, maybe we start with the night country. I don't. How did this land for you in terms of? It's an instance where you have a bit of dialogue where like the name of the show or movie is in the dialogue.
Yeah, well, I don't remember in seasons 1 through 3, McConaughey or Hershey ever saying, "We are true detectives,"
Come out with True Detective.
Yeah. That's not my favorite thing when that happens. I have to combine that with the fact that I don't think we'd heard of this Otis character until about 15 minutes into this episode. So to have him be sort of this central figure that provides this, or what's going on here at the end of this, I guess that, I can't complain too much about that, but I'm very curious to see what that means. There's clearly a sort of a double entendre here between the night country where there is no day and what his message of what night country means. But yeah, open to interpretation of what that is.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it is interesting. I'm pretty okay with it. They discover this guy Otis, and we should probably emphasize almost how, right? Because Danvers had asked Pete to look for anyone who had similar injuries to the
Yeah.
guys in the corpsicle, and this is who he came up with. And then he does actually seem to be connected to things. Um, what happened to him? How did he get those injuries?
Yeah.
Does seem like a significant lead in terms of trying to figure out what happened to the researchers.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, he's also a drug addict, and I don't know actually, like where things were left at the end of the episode was a little bit odd because Danvers was talking to him. Um, I feel like they should be bringing him into the station, don't you?
Yeah. So I will admit this part both confused me and frustrated me. When I'm really diving deep in sort of a whodunit show, to have someone introduced two-thirds of the way through that has had no bearing or reference to what's happened so far is sometimes frustrating. I understand the methods by which this person is brought in, but now he's just at the place that they decide to go look for Raymond Clark, and so that part of confused me as to why that's the case. And then yeah, so she confronts Danvers confronts him. He says, either he is has absorbed some kind of something with the rest of these people have in the town, or he is high on drugs and talks about being in the night country. But then it seems like she leaves him to go find Navarro. Navarro is seeing ghosts and she's looks scared out of her mind. And so yeah, it's sort of this ominous ending that has no real answers to it.
I wasn't a huge fan of how it played, and
Yeah.
we'll see how it picks up next episode in terms of this. As I say, it feels to me like, okay, you've got this guy Otis. He is a significant lead. You
Yeah.
find him, it further seems like he's wearing Raymond Clark's jacket or parka. Again, that seems significant. So she's grilling him, asking him where Raymond Clark is, right? But again, it feels to me like as the detectives here, they should be bringing that guy in with them at
Yeah.
this point. But the way it plays feels like Danvers responds by going, "Oh, he's in that country. All right, thanks for your time.
Yeah. Gotta
You
go
know,
tell
we got
Navarro.
got
Yeah.
the go about your heroin. You know,
Yeah.
see you later." And I just, I don't know. Maybe that's
What
not right. Like maybe she cuffed him and left him somewhere and went to look for Navarro, and they are going to take him
right.
in at the beginning of the next episode. But it
One
kind
of
of
the
felt a little bit like she was satisfied with the answer that he is
one
well, in
one
the
of the
night
things that
country.
I think Captain Connolly, who was back in this episode again, and Pete Pryor have made clear to us in this season is that Danvers is a pretty shitty cop. I mean, personally, professionally, I think it's a sense of we don't exactly know what happened in the Wheeler household, who did what
Mm.
and who called for what and who's covering it up. But yeah, it's almost like everything's a means to her own ends no matter what else she has to push off to the side, right? So I don't we don't know what happened here. We don't know what's happening with Otis, what she decided to do here, but it's she doesn't seem to be well, let me put it this way. I don't blame Captain Connolly for saying we need to have other people go take care of this stuff because you're kind of overwhelmed with seven dead bodies, girl killing herself, mine versus native protests. She's on the verge of losing it.
Yeah, I don't know. Perhaps right. I mean, at least there is a level at which she does strike me as a good detective, but not
Yeah.
person. You know, and what everything Connolly says about she's not good with people. That pans out. We also in this episode get apparently her stepdaughter Leah is the one who vandalizes the mine office or whatever. Um, and she tells Kate, no, you're not allowed to press charges. I don't,
Yeah.
is that going to go anywhere? I mean,
Yeah, which
um,
which eventually causes the friction that forces Leah out of the house to go live at the Prior's house. It seems like yeah, this has been building and building and building, which is why it was strange. I think at the very beginning of the episode, Danvers can't sleep. She goes in like has this sweet moment with Leah where she's just sort of looking over her, but it's after she watched the video of Annie again. So yeah, that just sort of I think after that moment shocked me that oh okay they have now had some irreconcilable things happen between the two of them.
yeah, and I wonder where that's going, if anywhere. Um, as we'll talk about in a minute, the stuff with Navarro's sister did go
Yeah.
somewhere. So maybe the stuff with Leah also will go somewhere. That I mean, to be clear, I mean somewhere that like ties into the mystery or what have you. If not, if it's just there in terms of the interpersonal dynamics of these people's lives in the
Yeah.
story, that's fine, right? Um, but I don't know, man. Leah's being a can I say she's being a stupid teenager? Like, what are you doing? You going to vandalize the
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whatever. The things that we saw in the first couple episodes, not great. Maybe teenagers being teenagers, but yeah, to go, it seems like a day and a half ago, you joined this sort of this group that protests against the mines. Now you're already spray painting murderers across the door. This is not sort of a good trajectory for you to be on.
you know,
And I found myself as once that split happened between Leah and Danvers, why are they also focusing so much on this episode on apparently I think his name is Holden, the son that she had that we
yeah.
just assume has died at this point. What's going to happen to Leah that's really going to cause some sort of breakdown by Danvers because she hasn't been able to protect another child? Like, will there be retribution against Leah for this? I just there's sort of this connection there that might need to be made because this episode and others have focused so much on this child that we believe to be lost.
Yeah, that's true, right? And I mean, I think it's pretty clear to me that from Danvers' point of view, she has some relatively rational worries about Leah getting involved with this stuff because Annie was involved with this stuff. And the theory that that's what got her killed is not groundless, right? Um, on the other side of things, I don't know what Leah expected, like that this is the impetus for the massive falling out. She's going to storm out of the house on Christmas Eve. What did she want Liz to do? She wanted him to say, oh, "Okay, go ahead and press charges." Like, is that what you wanted?
Yeah,
I
that's one thing I think that if maybe Leah had been next to Danvers when Danvers is basically pleading with the mine owner to not press charges, would this have been different? We just don't know.
yeah, but she's a teenager. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, it's realistic enough, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, as you noted, no one's life seems to be going particularly well. Danvers gets incredibly drunk, although she does seem to make a break in the case as she's drinking her absolute. And she goes to Connolly and he yells at her, and so she doesn't even get her, hook up. Um, Hank Pryor, as expected, was being scammed, apparently.
Was being scammed. His son finally asked him, "Did you in fact send her money?" We knew from the very first moment we saw this that she is not going to show up when she says she is. Um, I almost when you saw the gift, when you saw
Mhm.
the champagne in the fridge, you saw him picking up rose petals one by one off his bed. I mean, this guy is an idiot, but I almost felt bad for for him. What happened?
I did kind of feel bad for him, particularly, I mean, all that stuff, yeah, but particularly when he was at the airport, because there was a brief moment where I found myself thinking, maybe she is real,
Yeah,
maybe she is going to get off the plane,
yeah.
and the way they filmed that and everything, like, no, you know, but he's, at least in what he says to his son, in denial, and I wonder how much in his own mind he is um, in denial as opposed to realizing at this point that he's been scammed.
Yeah, I had that same thought. Is it just a front you're putting up for your son? When clearly everyone can see that that this is what has happened. You've been catfished here. And that even though he doesn't want to, and we've seen this disruptive relationship between him and his son, he has no one else to turn to. Like, I have to turn to my son and his family, which may or may not like me as we go into Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably is that. I think he probably does realize at this point.
Yeah.
that he's been scammed, but he will never, ever, ever admit it.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Um, he'll confabulate or whatever, come up with something like, "Oh, her mom got real sick," and it's just not going to work out. Um, let's see on the let's go on sticking on the kind of interpersonal for a little bit. Talk about the Julia stuff.
Yeah.
Um, this was quite sad.
Yeah. This
Um,
was very tough because it's almost the sobering part of realizing what's happening to her, and then she and Navarro realizing that the best thing for her is to go into this facility, and just sort of the emotion of doing that. And you think about having to do that on Christmas Eve. You think about the idea of what your sister must be going through, and to then see her. I mean, we watch her disrobe and go out into this, this sea or whatever it is for, which is going to inevitably kill her. And then to see on top of that, compounded by Navarro's reaction and how she, chooses to handle that news. I,
yeah,
I mean, this is just, and obviously we can't help but think that it's not just anger that the place let her go, that her sister had this happen, that she's lost her sister, but there's some realization creeping in that this is happening to me too. And I think that it's pretty clear to say now that the things that are being seen or supernaturally or ghosts or whatever it is, besides something with Rose, only a Navarro sister is seeing this stuff, as far as I can tell.
yeah, right. So there's a question about the, I don't know, metaphysical reality, if you like,
Yeah.
of those visions. Julia, the orange rolls out. She looks under the bed. You know, what I wrote, a ghost. I don't know what to
Yeah.
call it. And in the flashback, we flash back again to Wheeler's. It was kind of interesting there how Danvers was saying, "You saw something," and Navarro saying, "No, I didn't," and she calls her a liar. Then when we see in the flashback, I guess what we see is her seeing something, right?
Yeah.
I read that.
And I think that if I'm remembering the timeline of this, that the Wheeler case is before the Annie murder, slightly before the Annie murder. Do I have that right?
I don't think so, but we'd have to double check
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, we have to
Here's what I do know fairly with a good degree of certainty. They've said that the Wheeler case was the last case they worked together.
That's right.
That
That's
seems to
right.
imply to me that it was after. I mean, the Annie K case was ongoing, the extent that they didn't solve it,
Yeah.
but that this was their last case together has
Yeah.
been said, as I recall.
And so I wonder, and I think that I don't know if they're trying to lead us to believe that at the Wheeler house, that's the first time that she sees something, but what she's going through, even Danvers tells me, can be traced all the way back to that. And so this isn't like a, oh my gosh, something is developing. It's happened to my mother, it happened to my sister. Now I can feel it's starting to happen to me. She's been dealing with this, maybe even hiding it for 6, 7 years now, ever since
Right.
then. And yeah, I think that we don't have any other instances of people besides a Navarro sister or Rose seeing a dead or spirited entity in any way. I think I have that correct.
Yeah. Now, was your impression that it was always the same one? Right. So we've got at Wheeler's, we've got under Julia's bed, and we've
Yeah.
got in the dredges at the end.
Yeah, so I think that the end was a clearly different spirit or person or whatever you want to call it than what looked like could have been the same person under the bed and at the Wheeler house. But it just looked completely different to me in terms of an extremely skinny female at the end, whereas I feel certain in saying they were different, but I mean we have no way of knowing at this point.
Okay. I wasn't sure. So,
Yeah.
and these types of things can be really hard to figure out. You can start digging into like,
Yeah.
well, who's the actor? But then you probably don't find it. I
Yeah.
remember doing this on some other things. Like, is that the same?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we'll see if the show keys us in on that down the line or anything like that.
Yeah. And
Um,
that was one of my questions that I, put on here before we started is, do we have any clue who this is or
right,
why they are there? It doesn't necessarily appear to me to be their mother, which might make sense, but I just have no concept of who this could be.
right. I mean,
It's not
uh,
Annie.
no, it's not Andy. Um, I have no idea really.
Yeah.
You know,
Just add it to the
um,
list of mysteries we need solved.
right. And the deeper one of like, is this season of True Detective telling us that there really are ghosts and spirits?
Yeah.
The
So this
Travis
is
stuff does kind of hit that front.
yeah. So I'm glad that you brought that up because yeah, obviously consume any content about this show, and this is the debate, right? Is this sort of a man-made evil that's going on here, or is this some sort of force of evil that's driving these things, or a combination of both? Um, and if it was only Navarro's seeing these things or having these hallucinations or these visions, it would lead me to think that there's either something familial, genetic, or something to do with that family that's causing this. But with Rose having this sort of connection or this communion with those who have passed on, and Danvers starting to at least have memories or visions or these things with polar bears. It's like you could pretty easily delineate it if it was just Navarro's, but it seems to be, for lack of a better term, spreading amongst the town.
I'm glad you mentioned the polar bear because we should hit on the polar bear.
Yeah.
Polar bear is kind of a weird thing.
Hmm.
Um, Previously, Navarro saw the polar bear in the middle of the road,
Yep.
and in this episode, Danvers sees a polar bear, and we can infer that it's the same polar bear because it's missing an eye,
Missing an eye.
and that stuffed animal toy also is missing an eye. The
Yes.
one that in this episode Danvers throws out into the yard, which
Yeah.
I don't know what you're doing. It doesn't make it go away.
Nope. No, it
Just
doesn't.
litter it in your yard. Um, but yeah, there's a big question I think about that polar bear.
Yeah, and it's clearly attached to this young boy, Holden, and what he carried around as his toy all the time. Um, we I anticipate this will come up, will be answered at some point in these next two episodes. What happened with Danvers, whether it was husband or partner, with Holden, what caused her to, or what caused sort of their death, we can only presume. And then, so was a polar bear involved in that? Is what they're seeing real? Is this something that sort of this connects this trauma that the two of them have? I just, it's hard to guess right now.
Yeah, I do infer that they haven't talked about it
Yeah.
because Navarro finds the stuffed toy and she saw the polar bear on the road, right? So she has to be thinking about that um, as she's asking about it being Holden's toy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't get pushed any further than that. Lots of questions. So I'm piecing some things together. Part of what I wanted to do. You mentioned Otis, like he's kind of shoehorned in here, or he's
Hmm.
newly introduced. It would seem that he mapped the caves where Annie was in the video. I think,
Yeah.
presuming that is indeed where she was.
Yeah, that's the inference from the geology teacher or whoever he is that they go see on Christmas Eve.
Now I feel bad for not learning his name.
Yeah.
Geology teacher guy whose wife clearly knows that he cheated on her.
I still contend that a high school in the small town of Ennis, Alaska, is not going to have a geology teacher, but it's neither here nor there. Let's
Oh
keep.
no, I mean, everyone has to take like earth science,
I guess that's true. Yeah, maybe he's
right?
a general science teacher.
Yeah, you'd have to expect though that he would be like the science teacher,
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
specifically, I only teach geology.
yeah,
Um, so in the ice cave on the video, it seems like there's whale teeth, I guess. Um, at first I think, hey, there aren't any caves around here, but geology teacher guys, oh no, yeah, there is. And
yeah.
okay, Otis mapped them, so we'll see where that goes. And then there's this bit where Danvers believes that the power went out in both videos that she's watching, this kind of flash or what have you. And so they're at least theorizing that there was some power in the ice cave, which is
Hmm.
kind of weird. And I think they at least hypothesized that this other guy, Oliver, provided the generator. Of course, although Danvers makes Navarro and Pete go to Oliver's place on Christmas Eve, he is gone in the wind. But he did take the time to draw some spirals before he
Yeah,
before he took off.
and leave a rock or something that had spirals carved into it as well. This I know this is could be a very minor thing. This seemed like the largest leap that we've had in the show, that there must have been power in the cave, and that power must have come from the guy who used to work with equipment at the research station. It's like, I think this is Ennis, Alaska. There are probably dozens of people who have a generator for various things. Like,
Yeah, you
why
can
is
get
it
one of those
come from this
little,
guy?
you can get one of like a little generator, like put it on a
Yeah,
little cart,
exactly.
and use it to power a light bulb or something,
Right.
Um, yeah,
I mean, it
like,
just sort of served as a pathway to get back to his little shack so that we can see that, oh, the spirals got him too, or whatever, whatever it is.
yeah. I mean, I guess it hasn't been definitively established, but they do jump to that conclusion, and it seems to be panning out.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, he's what's going on with the spirals? Um, I
Are we
want to talk.
are we going to get any? We're not going to get any resolution about anything to do with spirals. That's clear at this point, right?
You think they're just there for the vibes?
They're just there to for the
Uh,
fans to connect back. They're not going to actually explain anything about what it means. You can't ruin the mystery if you want more spirals and more True Detective seasons. It just has to be the point that connects each path along these seasons, I think.
yeah, we'll see. Ooh, maybe there's a connection here with the last thing. I think it's the last thing I want to talk about, which is Twist and Shout. We
Okay.
noted, right? So in the previous episode, Wheeler was whistling, and apparently he was whistling Twist and Shout, which we did not catch,
Yeah.
but we should hit that point.
Yes.
Um, and then further in this episode, the end credits are a slowed down cover version of Twist and Shout. So the show is very clearly telling us that this song is important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any thoughts on how?
I I can't think of sort of an immediate way, and I'm just sort of glancing at lyrics as we talk, an immediate way that this song would lend itself to any part of this mystery. Um, I mean, it's sort of permeated every piece of culture and has been around for 70 years almost. I don't see the
Yeah,
connection, but I may just being obtuse about something or missing something. Or
I
is
have a
it
couple of thoughts. A couple of
okay?
thoughts.
I'm all ears because I don't know.
These aren't even like theories. Okay, there's like a couple of thoughts. Um, we go back to the Ferris Bueller scene.
Yep.
I happened to just go ahead and rewatch that scene, and one thing that's pretty clear about that scene in Ferris Bueller is that the song Twist and Shout is presented as infectious.
Okay. Okay.
People can't help but get into it, right? Ferris is doing his thing in the parade. Construction workers over there start dancing along.
Mm.
Ferris's dad, who's at work, hears it from the window and he starts dancing in his office. I don't know. Maybe
So,
maybe
so,
that's
so
something.
you're talking sort of earworm permeates us, infects us, much like one of the major theories of the season is that whatever's happening in the mine is combining with what's happening at Salal to sort of affect the people in this town.
Yeah, maybe this is some kind of connection, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So I could see that.
it's I don't know, more of like a resonance or something than a theory. And the other thing I just got to thinking about is we went from the spiral to Twist and Shout as well. The spiral sort of twisty, and you shout because you're
Yeah. Yeah,
because you saw a ghost.
we get the Lund shout, right? That's happened a couple of times now. Um Lund had the spiral on his forehead. I just as we get through now four of six parts, my mind automatically goes to what will they tell us and what will they not tell us? Like
Yeah,
what boxes will be opened and what will be left, in J.J. Abrams style, what will be left open to interpretation? How does the mystery work? Um, there are certain things like the spiral and like this song that I think we may get some exposition of, yeah, the song was playing when Danvers got in a wreck when her spouse and son were killed, right?
yeah,
Um, but that doesn't explain why it's on repeat at the Slaw station, why Wheeler's whistling it. I think there are a couple things like that that may just be left up to this is just sort of a mysterious. I just like to leave you think something to think about.
yeah, or right, or like we land on a question.
Yeah.
Do you believe that the Beatles tapped into a deep and ancient evil
Yeah.
that, or it's all coincidence,
Yeah.
but most likely,
Parents in the 60s certainly think so. Yes, the Beatles were evil.
indeed,
Yeah,
it's all rock and roll's fault.
that's right.
Clearly, it's obvious if you've been paying attention. Um, so yeah, but it's definitely worth noting,
Yeah.
particularly the whistling thing. I was a little upset that we missed that. I didn't hear it as
No,
Twist and Shout.
I didn't hear it either. And this is what we talked about offline. It's the disadvantage of watching this via screeners with no subtitles, no context. It's we got to do our best over here.
Right, because you're saying the subtitles say it's Twist and Shout, but the screeners provided by HBO don't have subtitles or captions, which I do think is an accessibility issue and not okay. But
I agree.
I'll avoid going on a rant about that at the moment. I think that about covers it for this episode. Anything we missed here you want to get in before we're done?
Yeah, we've really, I think, hit this one pretty hard. It is, again, not, in my opinion, gotten us closer to solving the mystery, but has provided a lot of layers of the onions of these characters,
Yeah.
who they are and who they might be, and what it leads to them doing as we get closer to the solving of this mystery. I mean,
And
and also maybe worth mentioning, there was the sort of this dust up between the original creator of True Detective, so Dick
yeah,
Pazzolatto and Issa Lopez, where apparently he's not a fan of this. Issa
yeah.
Lopez is like, okay, stay in your lane. We don't care.
So like, I was gonna be fine just like to even not mention it because I don't care what he
Yeah.
thinks. I just whatever, man.
Yeah. But it is
Whatever.
interesting to see. We touched on this last week. Like this is a long horror movie is what this is, right? And I think that's great. This is Issa Lopez's background. That's what she's good at. She's telling a good story. It's going to, I think, even ramp up as Navarro continues to have things happen to her. So I'm interested to see how this mystery and that element tie together.
Yeah, good. Me too. And maybe let me try to wrap things up here today with that. Like, let's revisit the questions, right? Because Annie was murdered. How did that happen? What was she doing in the ice caves in the first place? She had this relationship with Raymond Clark, which seemed like a good thing. I mean, I don't know if it's a good thing. Like, maybe he's an evil guy. But anyway, they seem to like be in it together. They're having an affair. We haven't seen signs that there was a rift between them. Even if we're suspecting him of killing her, we haven't seen anything to indicate that he would want to kill her. What was she doing in the caves? Was Raymond involved in that in some way? What happens when there is that little glitch on the video? And of course, she starts screaming and all of that, and so on and so forth. Um, it seems pretty clear. Maybe she died there and then was moved to the second location. What does this have to do with her being stabbed 32 times?
Yeah.
We've also previously been told she was like kicked and so on and so forth. Um, how does Raymond factor into all of that? He apparently just went back to work at Slough for
Yeah.
6 years and
Yeah.
just been hanging around, and everything's been basically fine, I guess. Um, what's the connection then with what happened at the research station? What's the connection between how those guys died who were in the corpsicle and what happened to Otis in the past, because their
Yep.
injuries were similar? So it seems like there's some connection there. And what happened to Oliver, I guess, is also kind of tied in here. But I think I've kind of hit
Yeah.
on the central mystery, which is what I wanted to do.
I think you're exactly right. There's a lot left to do in probably less than 2 hours, which again, all the more reason why we'll get answers to some of those, but there are other things that will be left for our interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there has to be some answer to like
Yeah.
how these people died.
Yeah. I
Like
agree.
some, so wanted to hit that here as we wrap up. But okay, good, good.
Yeah.
So 2 more weeks of this. We'll be back next Sunday night to talk about part 5, True Detective Night Country. Hopefully you'll join us. Thanks always for listening. Do check out the website, tvobsessive.com. You can read Ryan's doing recaps of each episode of this on there if you want to read those. And there's other stuff about True Detective, along with all sorts of other TV shows and so on. Please do support the site. Follow us on social media, search for TV Obsessive. We do have a YouTube channel that I'm kind of trying to put more things up on in at this point. So go to YouTube, subscribe, like, give that thumbs up thingy, um, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Looking forward to it. See you then.